You wake up exhausted, not because your body refused rest, but because your mind, restless and relentless, never allowed itself the gentle mercy of silence. The first light of day stirs the world, yet your thoughts have been racing through the night, chasing, calculating, circling the endless loops of worry and anticipation. There are emails, silent signals pulsing beneath the surface, each one a demand, a request, an expectation. Notifications blink and buzz, digital messengers of urgency stacking upon each other like stones in a riverbed, obstructing the tranquil flow of morning. Reminders, alarms, a to-do list so long and heavy that it seems less a tool for productivity and more a gauntlet to be survived. You sip your coffee, the warmth a small comfort against the cold press of obligation. Your thumb scrolls through curated windows into other people's lives, stories of success, quotes extolling the virtues of hustle, lists of hacks to squeeze more out of every second. The world flashes by, fast and shiny, and somewhere amid the noise, a whisper of inadequacy slips in. You wonder why, despite all your efforts, you still feel like you're falling short, as if you're losing a game you never agreed to play. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught, directly or quietly, in words or in glances, that if you're not doing something, you're falling behind. That rest is idleness, and idleness is failure. That to pause is to be overtaken, forgotten, left behind in the relentless march of progress. But what if that's a lie? What if the ceaseless motion, the unending race, is not the only way? What if, in fact, doing nothing is exactly what your soul craves? What it needs, desperately, quietly, beneath the surface? Over 2.5 millennia ago, Lao Tzu, a philosopher who watched empires rise and fall, sat with these questions. He witnessed the world's feverish striving and saw not strength, but suffering. He believed that true power does not emerge from force, from pushing and pulling, but from something subtler, softer, something we've almost forgotten in the cacophony of modern life. While today's world shouts, "Go faster, do more, be more," Lao Tzu whispers from the depths of time, offering something radically different. Slow down, let go, do less. Trust the wisdom of the pause. It is not laziness. It is not resignation. It is wisdom. The kind that grows in the silence between thoughts, the spaces between breaths, the kind that listens instead of shouting. You may have heard the phrase Wu Wei. In the language of the Tao, it is often rendered as non-action or effortless action. But it is not inertia. It is not the absence of effort. It is the absence of forced effort, of swimming against the current simply because you feel you must. Imagine for a moment water. It does not resist the stones in its path. It does not argue with the riverbank. It flows, finding the path of least resistance, patient and persistent. And yet, over years, it carves canyons, shapes mountains, transforms the world not by force, but by presence. This is the gentle, unstoppable wisdom Lao Tzu spoke of. Not weakness, resilience. Not passivity, profound alignment with the nature of things. Ask yourself, when did life start to feel like a race you can't win? When did every moment become another opportunity to fall behind, another chance to miss the mark? We glorify busyness. We wear exhaustion like a badge. Our value, we're told, is measured in output, in tasks completed, boxes checked, milestones achieved. Even rest has become performative. Self-care as a productivity hack, meditation as a way to recharge for more work. We rest not to restore our souls, but to return to the grind with renewed vigor. Lao Tzu saw this centuries before the first motivational quote was ever posted online. He wrote, "Rushing into action, you fail. Trying to grasp things, you lose them. The master allows things to unfold." This was not an excuse for inaction. It was a call to wise action, to alignment with the natural rhythms of life. Because not all movement is progress, not all rest is weakness, not all doing is necessary. Modern life has confused activity with purpose. You are told to do more, be more, achieve more. But rarely are you asked, for what? For whose approval? Toward what end? You could spend your entire life climbing, only to reach the summit and realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. Lao Tzu invites you to stop, to sit, to breathe, to listen to what arises in the space where striving ends and being begins. He understood that when you stop doing, you begin to be. And being is where the real wisdom lives. Maybe your exhaustion is not a sign of weakness, but of strength, of endurance in a system that treats people as machines, that values output over essence. You were not built to chase notifications, to compete endlessly with everyone, everywhere. You were made for something deeper. Lao Tzu didn't know about hustle culture, but he did write, "When you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Let that truth settle, like sediment in a pond until the water is clear." Imagine this. You stop rushing. You stop measuring your worth by checklists and quotas. You step off the treadmill of endless comparison and, for the first time in a long time, you let yourself arrive exactly where you are. You align not with the world's demands, but with your own true self. You let go of control, and in that surrender, you discover something far more powerful: peace. But here's the paradox. Doing nothing is hard. Not because it requires effort, but because it is a radical act. It flies in the face of everything you've been taught, every script you've been handed. It feels like failure. It feels like laziness. It feels like falling behind. But it's not. It is a return to self, to stillness, to sanity. Lao Tzu taught that the most powerful force in the universe is not force itself, but stillness, awareness, acceptance. He asked, "Do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself?" That's what we've forgotten. How to wait, how to trust in the unfolding of things. We fill every gap, every silence, every pause with noise, with distraction, with more. Because being still reveals the truths we'd rather avoid. But the secret is this: stillness is not empty. It is where your real life begins. Creativity, clarity, energy, they do not emerge from constant motion, but from presence. From the quiet, patient attention you give to your own experience. So what does doing nothing look like in this world? It is not withdrawal. It is not escapism. It is stepping away from your screen before your soul begs you to. It is walking without a podcast, sitting without a plan, breathing without a goal. It is trusting that not everything needs your input, your reaction, your control. Sometimes it is simply sitting and allowing life to unfold without needing to shape it. Because you are not your productivity. You are not your output. You are not a machine built to perform. You are a living, breathing expression of life itself. A mystery, a miracle, a manifestation of the same force that moves the tides and stirs the stars. And life is not in a hurry. The Tao, the Way, moves slowly but surely. It does not push, it does not strive, it simply is. And so can you. Today, let yourself try something radical. Stop. Let go. Wait, not forever, just long enough to remember what really matters. To remember that you are not lazy, not behind, not a failure for refusing to outrun a world that never lets you arrive. You don't have to run anymore. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. These words are not a motivational quote to be posted and forgotten. They are a map. A way back to peace, back to meaning, back to yourself. Imagine the world from this perspective, not as a battlefield, but as a garden. Not a race, but a river. Imagine yourself not as a competitor, but as a participant in the unfolding of life. There is a wisdom in the ancient stones, in the roots that reach quietly into the earth. There is a story in the slow drift of clouds, in the patient spiral of galaxies. All things move, but not all things rush. All things change, but not all things chase. What if you allowed yourself to live by these rhythms? What if you trusted that your worth is not something to be earned, but something inherent? Something woven into the very fabric of your being. To do nothing, in the truest sense, is not to abandon life, but to embrace it more fully. It is to recognize that you are already enough, already whole, already home. In the silence that follows letting go, you may discover something extraordinary. The sound of your own soul, the pulse of your own heart, the subtle, persistent beauty of simply being alive. You may find that the answers you've been seeking are not at the end of another checklist, but in the space you make for yourself when you stop striving. You may find that the peace you crave is not a reward for hard work, but a birthright waiting to be claimed. Let yourself rest, let yourself be, let yourself return. There is a path, ancient and enduring, that leads away from the noise and toward the heart of things. It is not always easy. It is not always comfortable, but it is true. And in following it, you may find at last that you are not falling behind, but falling into place. Lao Tzu's wisdom endures because it speaks to something universal, something we all know deep down, beneath the layers of expectation and anxiety. That the greatest strength is not in pushing harder, but in knowing when to yield. That the deepest wisdom is not in having all the answers, but in being open to the questions. In this space, in this pause, you reclaim your life from the tyranny of urgency. You remember that busyness is not the measure of worth, and that rest is not a luxury, but a necessity. You remember that you are not separate from the world, but a part of its unfolding, a note in its symphony, a ripple in its tide. You remember that peace is not something to be won, but something to be allowed. So breathe. Let the mud settle. Wait for the water to clear. Trust that when you allow things to unfold, you are not abandoning life, but stepping into it more completely. Trust that, as Lao Tzu wrote, when nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. This is not a journey of doing, but of being. Not a story of achieving, but of awakening. The world may not understand. It may judge, may question, may push you to rejoin the race. But you will know, in the quiet center of your being, that you are moving in harmony with the deepest currents of life. And in that harmony, you may find, at last, the peace, the meaning, the homecoming you've been searching for all along. Let yourself return. Let yourself rest. Let yourself be. For in being, you find the wisdom to know when to act, the strength to flow with life, and the courage to trust that you are already enough. In being, you come home to yourself, and in coming home, you find the whole world waiting.